Welcome to the December 18th, 2018 Reactive Consciousness episode, our in-depth podcast about what happened this week in our lives. I am your host, Lotus Prince, and this is...
vysethebold. Recovering from a...
Oh, sorry. Nobody cares, Vice.
Jeez.
No, sorry, continue.
I have forcibly taken over
today.
Host duties, and this will be the case for the foreseeable future. Until it changes.
I unfortunately am recovering from a cold, so I figured you'd rather hear Lotus Prince's
dulcet
pipes rather
tones.
than mine. Well, I've used dulcet tones before,
yeah.
so I have to go
like
with
that's
crooning
ever stopped
pipes.
us in the past.
Crooning pipes.
Let's talk about James Bond for a while before getting to the actual point.
I mean, that's kind of the whole purpose of the
so,
show to begin with.
In this week, there hasn't been a new James Bond movie, but I'm thinking about James Bond anyway. Let's go. No,
well, you know what's kind of funny is on one of my Facebook flashbacks, I think it was like in 2012. That's when Perry lent me like Casino Royale, the book.
Sure.
And I commented that like if James Bond movies were straight up adaptations of the books, they would be more about like just getting drunk and like wondering about life, and then 10 minutes of gunfights.
Yeah, and having like racist thoughts, and then playing baccarat instead of poker. At least in Casino Royale.
I was reading recently about Warren Zevon, who's like a famous songwriter and musician, who passed away like earlier in the century. And like when he was diagnosed with cancer that would turn out to be like his fatal illness, they asked him like, what were you living for? Because he had refused cancer treatment, and he said that like one thing he wanted to do was survive until the next James Bond movie came out, and he did.
Oh wow!
Which James Bond movie was it?
It was Die Another Day.
Oh no!
Oh no!
And then he died.
That sucks.
Was it on that day or a different one?
Let's see. He died in 2003, and the movie came out in 2002, I think.
And that was not a very good one. It had a good theme
that
song.
That is arguably the worst one.
Yeah, that's the one with Halle Berry, right?
Pierce Brosnan, Halle Berry.
I'm sure that answer to the question was largely sarcastic.
Yeah, I became more of a fan of him when I knew how much of a big fan he was of Philadelphia. Nice. Like he actually in his most famous song Werewolves of London, he talks about a specific Chinese restaurant in Chinatown, Philadelphia. Nice. Which is pretty awesome.
Did he write about you specifically? Is he that much of a fan of Philadelphia?
Probably not. I was even less famous than I was.
I would have to check the lyrics
right
again.
Now. Believe it or not. But anyway, why don't we get on to...
there's our James Bond minute there. But yeah, as for actual reactive consciousness stuff, there was a pretty interesting thing that came up. Of all things, we have a sort of unofficial follow-up to Doom, like Doom episode 1. Doom 1, but it had 4 episodes. It originally had 3 episodes: Knee Deep in the Dead, The Shores of Hell, and Inferno. And then later on, they released episode 4, Thigh Flesh
That was
Consumed.
Ultimate Doom, right? Or Final Doom?
No, this is all Doom 1. And then they released Thigh Flesh Consumed, which was Doom 1 episode 4. And now it seems that John Romero is he's releasing a free mod that's kind of Doom episode 5, or not, mod, but like WAD files, I believe it is, and it's called
it's
Sigil.
a mega WAD.
There
That's
it
what
is.
He's calling it.
And it's called Sigil. So get ready for more Doom action, which is freaking amazing.
Yeah, not only that, but he's like pulling out all the stops for it. It is technically free to anybody who owns a full copy of Doom. I don't know how they're verifying that at all, but so if you own Doom at all, you can download this. He is selling it, but with a bunch of perks. And not only that, but he did all kinds of cool stuff. He got Buckethead if any metalhead nerd knows who Buckethead is. He's considered one of the best guitarists of all time. He was the follow-up guitarist for Guns N' Roses after Slash left. Mm-hmm. And he is one of the living technical masters of guitar, of electric guitar, and he wrote the soundtrack to Sigil. apparently. So
that's awesome.
He pulled out all the stops. They're doing limited run boxed editions of Sigil with the soundtrack included and all kinds of goodies.
Yeah, and it's actually with limited run games as well.
Yeah, exactly.
And there's 2 releases of this. One is like an old school 90s big box edition, which comes with the stuff that Vice just said, and the other is like, it's insane. It's like $160. Like, I think it's like $166, but the reason for that is that it's like a callback to that id gigantic box compilation thing that was released in very limited amounts that came with all sorts of crazy stuff, like the Doom comic and like a t-shirt and a compendium and stuff.
So it looks like it.
Yeah. So the Sigil big box is also a giant horizontal box that comes with a bunch of stuff, including, I believe, a pewter figure of John Romero's head on a stake, which is a callback to the final boss's true form in Doom 2.
Yeah.
Actually, in Doom 2, when you first meet that boss, you hear creepy backward speech, and if you play it forwards, it says something like, to kill, like, in order to win or whatever, you must kill me, John Romero.
Yep.
It's like,
yeah,
what?
That's true.
Yeah.
So what's also interesting about this is that he wrote a new episode for Doom rather than Doom 2, and I don't know whether you read his interview on the website. Did you, Lotus?
No. Although Doom 2 has never had episodes. It was like Doom 1 episode, like 1 through 4. Doom 2 was its own thing, and then there was Final Doom, which was 2 different sets of Doom, kind of.
Well, they added new levels to Doom 2 when...
in the BFG edition?
Yeah, exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
True, yeah.
So that's what I'm counting episodes,
Gotcha.
That kind of thing. But what's interesting about this is usually when stuff is added, it's added to Doom 2 because it has updates. But he wanted to do it to Doom 1 because he wanted to bridge the gap of the teleportation in between Mars and Earth.
Nice.
So he wanted to explore what happens to the Doom Marine in between the two places. He's calling it like a transporter malfunction. The Doom guy has the worst luck in the world, by the way.
It's pretty bad. Speaking of
I think he's just doing it on purpose
at
this point.
Well, speaking of transporter malfunction, isn't that basically how Doom 3 started?
Yes. That's exactly how it starts.
Yeah. Like Doom 3 is kind of, sort of, a remake of Doom 1, but they give more of an actual story to it.
I mean, there's no real chronology until kind of Doom 2016 kind of ties it all together, sort of.
Yeah, Doom 2016 is like, after all that, we're moving on, and it's like, oh, okay.
Yeah, it just basically wiped it clean, but basically said, this is a legacy character, he's been around, he's been doing badass things for a long time, and, he's mythical.
Although
it doesn't really matter what the specifics are, he was there.
Well, there is one specific. Doom 2 happened.
Yes, Doom 2 did happen. Yeah, and probably Doom 1, but...
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised, but, there is a specific event in Doom 2 that, you can
There's
tell, that's the thing,
yes.
yeah.
Yes. Awesome. Pardon me.
Okay, I won't. Alright, so, OldManStompy, do you have anything you want to weigh in on Sigil, if you know anything about it? Or
I personally don't know anything about Sigil. I've owned the Doom games for a very long time. It was one of the first big packages I bought on Steam, and I'm sort of always meant to play them. I guess part of what held me back was that, the Doom games have such an episodic structure, and there are so many versions of them that I just never felt it always feels like there's another version of Doom coming out, or something else, or a new compilation being released. Just a lot of retro games that are still in wide circulation.
Yeah, Duke Nukem kind of has that going on too. They added levels to it recently.
I'm kind of like Lotus in that I like to play series in order.
Yeah.
But for example, I bought the first 3 Resident Evil games, but Resident Evil 1 isn't really that exciting to play anymore, and there's a much better version of it, in the remake, which I didn't have.
Oh,
and
sure.
Then also for Resident Evil 2, do you want to play the both sides of the story to get the whole thing? Do you want to play Jill's story and Chris's story? And so like every time I think about like what I have to do to actually play all the Doom games or all the Resident Evil games, I just get like really stressed out and I decide to play Binding of Isaac again.
It's always a good idea to ask an expert with these series, because you can know what stuff is essential and not essential.
I mean, we've had like a bunch of discussions on this in the past, so it's not like I can ask you, but like sometimes I don't want like the recommendation. I want like a recommendation which is like specifically tailored to me based on like idiosyncrasies in my gaming habits that nobody knows about except me, and is like largely impossible to satisfy.
No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
The problem isn't the game. The problem is me. Like you can't fix me.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as Resident Evil 1 is concerned, though, it's not even either character side of the story. Like, Resident Evil 2 actually does that, but with Resident Evil 1, it's just like, just pick one. I think Chris is canon, but like, whatever, just pick one.
Yeah, and Resident Evil 2, the second character is much quicker, because you'll know where everything is. So, and you'll be fighting Mr. X, which will mix it up a little bit. So, there's no problem there. I would just skip regular vanilla RE and just go with remake, because it's just that good. And
but my $5 in the PSN, I don't want it to go to waste.
All right, then play every version of RE1 like Lotus does.
No,
and
you don't want to do that. You do not want that.
I mean, at some point you have to make a decision
here.
At some point, you have to make a decision so you don't like lock up and not do anything.
Well, that's really the point. I'm terrible at making decisions.
Well, I mean, my first Resident Evil ever was remake, and when I went back to Resident Evil 1, it was kind of like an amusing curiosity.
Yeah. It's like a demo. It's like a really lo-fi demo.
Oh, there's no Lisa Trevor. Oh, Neptune almost doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Like one shark is bigger than the others, and they're all dead. Oh, that was Neptune? Oh, I remember him being a boss, but alright, never mind.
Here's the thing with Doom. Like, the first two games and Final Doom, if you wanna count that as an extension, are all basically the same game. They just progress. They just get more difficult, and they add weapons.
Yeah, Final Doom is basically Doom 2, like, with different levels. Doom 2 is actually an evolution of Doom 1 because it has like new enemies.
But it's so similar in today's world that it's almost quaint. It's almost like an expansion pack.
Yeah, if you play Doom 1, Episode 1, you're going to be like, where are all the enemies that I have heard about? There's like 5 enemies in Doom 1.
And not only that, but it's more like an arcade game than anything. You don't need to play it for story or anything like that.
You need to play it for the rockin' soundtrack.
Actually, a really good... that is true. A really good place to start is Doom 2016. I'll go out and say it. You can go back and play the old games and experience a lot of fun. But you don't have to play through them all.
Yeah, the thing is, I will say this about the Doom games, is there comes a point where it gets hard to figure out how to beat certain levels, because they get more puzzle-oriented as you go, with, like, proximity-activated doors, and you don't know where the key card is. But, like, after you've cleared the level out, you're just kind of wandering. And again, like Vice said, aside from text screens after select levels, it's just, like, play a map, beat it, see your percentage, play a map, beat it, like... Yeah, like, maybe go to Doom 2's final boss or something, but, like, just to see what it is. But, yeah, you don't really, like, it's not required reading, you know?
I think a neat study of like, Doom games is not just to do that, but to play through all of the Doom engine games as they were released, and that's kind of cool because
like
you can
Hexen, Strife.
Exactly. Strife is like the ultimate evolution of it. Strife did the
like
most
RPG elements.
Yeah, exactly.
Like dialogue.
So Strife is really cool. It's almost like Dark Forces 2.
Yeah. For fun, you should play Blakestone. Do that. Blakestone, Aliens of Gold.
You don't need that. That's an Apogee game, right?
Yeah, I actually I like that game quite a bit.
Yeah, but it's not necessary. It's cool if you like this style of game.
I know
if
it's
you
not
need more to play.
But like, yeah.
Yeah. but it's really cool to play the Doom engine games as they progress, because they do get more, like, they get very creative with what you could do with that engine, and it was not meant for it.
Yeah, and actually, you know what is really cool though, for real, is Doom 64, and there's like
cool
people have made sort of a mod so that you can play it on PC, which is the best way to play. But like,
that's the way to do it.
Doom 64 is interesting because the graphics are all different because it was on like a new then current gen system, and there are different enemies and weapons and stuff. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, there's plenty of lineage to go through, but I say if you're gonna play something, 2016 is a great place to start. It's
it really is
fucking good. So I don't know if you want to take that recommendation, OldManStompy.
Well,
but
so like when I kind of divide these like large series up, it's usually like engine based. So if I was gonna play the remake, for example, that's a different animal than playing through like Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, and then after you've like once you have those three, like the original PlayStation games together, then Resident Evil 4 is a pretty sharp divide in the way that the series was approached.
Well, you can give yourself a couple stepping stones. Play Resident Evil Survivor, then Code Veronica, then Gaiden on the Game Boy Color, then Survivor 2.
Survivor.
Well, anyway, my point is that like I would be totally fine, playing one of the newer Doom games, especially the the most recent one, maybe on the Switch or something.
It really is brilliant.
And just play that in a vacuum and not worry so much about the PC games, or just pick one arbitrarily and play it. Like, there's lots of ways to approach it. It's more that, like, when you buy a package, you don't you have no context, for example, for whether or not the version of the game that you got is, like, actually the one you want to play.
Yeah.
And if you have several of them, then you have to go, like, get a recommendation for every single game.
Doom 1 hasn't been altered too much, except they added, like, John Romero came out with, like, 2 new levels, like, within the last couple of years. But that
was weird. Like, Doom 1 Episode 1, Map 7, I think. Just, like, there's, like an alternate...
7B or something.
Yeah, there's, like, an alternate version of Map 7, which is way harder. It's like, oh, okay.
We had a discussion sort of in this vein on some recent topics in the last few weeks, where like a lot of the time when you talk about a re-release of a retro game, like that release of the game in a vacuum is often the best version to play until they decide to do it again in the next console generation, which oftentimes is even better. So like you're almost taking a snapshot and saying, if I feel like playing this game now, then I'm probably safe to buy it as long as I enjoy it within the next like 3 to 4 years.
That's true, and they've only really been like bringing this kind of stuff back that's this old recently, within the last 10 years. So like before that, let's say, like the 360 generation, they really didn't mess with much old stuff. They didn't really add much to it. In fact, that was probably an era of some piss poor ports as well of that stuff. So. Luckily, this kind of behavior hasn't been going on for very long. So, I mean, like, if you want to play every version of every Ys game, if you wanted to get into the Ys series, that's ridiculous. Like,
that's also like
don't play the PC for example, 98 games.
Like
don't
even I think Ys 5 when it came out had 2 versions.
No, Ys 4.
Ys 4.
Okay. It technically has 4 versions, and they're all completely different games. Completely.
Great.
None of them are have the same content. And I mean, you could technically play them all and still have a good time because they're separate games. I mean,
you can try. A lot of the older Ys games are very difficult to play, especially if you've played the newer ones.
I like the newest versions of 1 and 2. They're not too bad. But anyway, I digress. We should move on.
Yeah,
to topic.
That's a lot of.
You got a lot going on.
That's our Sigil discussion? ? I mean, Sigil isn't actually out, so I can't talk about the levels of the music, but
I'm sure
do look forward to it, and I'm sure it'll be freaking rocking. So this is an interesting topic. For Sega ages, Phantasy Star. Vice has talked about this for a while, but now it's actually released in the U.S. and Europe. So,
yeah, and God, did I buy that within the first hour.
It's been a long time coming, but finally delivered, right?
Yeah, and not only that, but it is everything it promised to be. It is excellent. They also did basically balanced the game as well, so that if you play it now, it is not super annoying. Okay. They adjusted the encounter rate and the experience and gold rates in which they fall. So this game, it's hard to believe they can make this game any better than this. Every feature that I would have ever wanted to add to it has been added by this version of the game. My major complaint of Phantasy Star, which I consider probably to be my favorite 8-bit RPG. I like it better than Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy. I haven't played the later Dragon Quest games on NES, so I guess that's up for debate, but a lot of people say that Phantasy Star 1 is still their favorite if they've played it. So that's the coda, is that, it was for a relatively obscure system.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
it was a Master System, right?
It was for the Master System, but compared to its contemporaries, the graphics were way better.
Okay.
It came out around the same time as Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy, but it had animations on the enemies, which was not a thing in either of those games. And the graphics are very lush and detailed and colorful. So it is a very good game. It is still very good. The major flaw that I had with it was just an old school design choice. The first-person dungeon mazes were very easy to get lost in.
Yeah.
Because back then you were supposed to break out your graphing paper to map
like
them
in
yourself.
King's Quest V, it was like, have fun.
So this game does it automatically for you on screen to the point where you don't even need to look at the main screen. You could just look at your minimap as to where you are.
Yeah.
Not only that, but it marks important things like traps. It will mark treasure chests. It will mark whether you've opened them. It will also mark whether there's a scripted boss encounter. So all of these things are marked on the map and will change with what you do to them, which is really neat.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
So this is a really awesome game if you have a Switch and you like old school RPGs or would like to play a really good example of one. This is it. Not only that, but you could save anywhere. And one other thing that is a huge improvement is back then they had very limited cartridge space, and when they translated the game from Japanese to English, what they would do is they would drastically shorten words to the point where it was difficult to understand what they were trying to get at, because in Japanese you can have whole words with a single symbol. So adding shoehorning English into a program that was never meant for it is much more difficult. We need several symbols in order to create just a word. What they did was they actually gave you in the start menu, they give you a manual that will tell you what all of the spells do, because there were no descriptions of the spells in game, which is phenomenal. They also tell you which characters can equip what, which was always a problem in old school RPGs. That wasn't really fixed until probably the later Dragon Quest games. And not only that, but it tells you like which it just has a whole list of things. It has a bestiary and all that stuff too.
Nice.
So everything that you could possibly want out of a modern rendition of Phantasy Star, one of the best games of all time, if you ask me, it's there. And not only that, but you could play Phantasy Star 2, 3, and 4 on the Switch now as well, with the Genesis collection that came out on it recently. So you could play all 4 of the original games before it switched over to PSO. So really, really cool stuff.
Mm-hmm. And while we're on the topic of Sega ages, that was Phantasy Star, but they're also bringing up Puyo Puyo 1 and 2. So those will be coming, coming out as well. It's been a while since I thought about Puyo Puyo, actually.
So Sega wholly owns Puyo Puyo now. It used to be a joint operation between Compile and Sega, and now Sega basically owns it lock stock.
Mm-hmm.
What's cool about this announcement is it's based off of the arcade versions of Puyo 1 and 2, not the Mega Drive or Genesis versions. So they'll be superior to their console counterparts, and it'll be really awesome when it comes to the United States finally. I don't think these got U.S. releases in the arcades or at home. Our home version of Puyo 2 was turned into Dr. Robotnik's Beam Machine.
Oh, that's what that was? Yeah.
Yes. So this will be plenty of magical girls in there instead of crappy Sonic cartoon characters like
Scratch and Ground are the best, okay? Leave them alone.
But yeah, this is cool that we're getting these games. And Outrun should be in North America, not too far distant future.
Marvelous. And of course, this is an obvious one, but with all the talk about Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, it's actually out now. So people have been playing the hell out of that and dealing with the World of Light and unlocking all sorts of characters and stuff like that. But at this point, we already know like who all the characters are, except for the DLC ones, outside of Joker, of course. So I don't really know what to add about Super Smash Bros. Other than I hope you're enjoying it. I don't have a Switch, so I'm just out of that conversation. But have either of you guys been playing it?
I am definitely enjoying it quite a lot. I picked it up the day it came out. So the thing that I liked the most about it was in the older Smash games, or at least the first couple, there was something called like challenge mode or event mode. And the idea was you'd have this like preset selection of like themed battles. Like you would unlock a trophy by having a fight on top of the trophy against like characters from the game that the trophy represented.
Sure.
And so the World of Light, as opposed to being like a platform RPG like the one in like the single player mode in Brawl was, it's more like just a gigantic event mode where you walk around this game board and every battle that you fight is a spirit, which is basically this game's trophies. There's no trophies in this game. They're just they're just little stickers that represent characters from one of the games in the series or objects. And all of the fights are themed around that spirit. So like I ran into Heracross, which is the beetle Pokemon from the second generation, and the fight for that is a Bowser, and the ground is sticky, and he walks crouched all the time like a beetle, and he only throws you.
That's really cool.
So and so there's like 600 something of these fights. It takes forever to get through the World of Light. So like all the fun is just like walking around the game board and seeing like what the next thing around the next corner is, and like what the theme of the fight's going to be, and who it represents. And you know, obviously it's Nintendo, and they're very thorough with like their exploration of the game universes that and like the homages that they pay to the characters in Smash Brothers, except for Cloud. They weren't allowed to put like anything from Final Fantasy VII in, but otherwise like it's so I mean I know you saw the thing about Paz from Peace Walker.
Oh yeah,
that was unreal.
I can't believe that's real. I can't.
It's definitely real.
Oh jeez. Please explain.
I mean the effect is a real thing. It's really common. I mean I'm 99% certain it's a real thing. I don't have that spirit myself to confirm, but it's believable that it would be an effect that you would have in the game. So like there's lots of spirits that you can equip as you fight these battles. So for example, I said that the Heracross fight had a sticky floor. You know, you can find a spirit that if you equip it to your character, it will make you immune to sticky floors. So you're supposed to like go around and gather spirits that have specific effects, and then you're supposed to go and like you mix and match them so that you're well equipped to deal with like whatever the theme of that upcoming battle is. Like if you have there's one I had a long time. I had a lot of trouble getting through, which was a fight against a Kirby team that all had star rods. So they would just like spam the star rods at me, and I would just die before I could do anything. But if you come back and you start with a character that has a reflector, and
I was going to say Fox.
Yeah, with the Franklin badge equipped, then they can't do anything to you for the first like 15 seconds of the battle, and that makes it a lot easier. So you know there are lots of spirits that cause you to start with an item, and and I know that there are battles in the game where the characters start with the bombs. So it's believable to me that there would be a Paz spirit that lets you start with a bomb as a reference to her role in Ground Zeroes.
Well, it's just like, man, if that character hasn't been treated poorly enough by its own by its own series. You have somebody making fun of it, which is hilarious.
I mean, let's remember that, like, in the opening cutscene, like, Snake just dies, like, in his cardboard box. Like, all the other characters are fighting against the...
That was funny as hell. You just see a box.
Just, like, in the box.
It's kind of fitting to have, like, you know, a very melodramatically serious. It's a very goofy series, but when it's serious, it's so goddamn melodramatically serious that it's almost ridiculous in itself. But yeah, I mean that character had one of the most traumatic experiences in any video game that I've ever played. So yeah, definitely look this up. If you dare and don't care about spoilers.
What we need is Snake to have that stupid ambulance box, which just has like a little siren on it.
I love that thing.
It just heals.
So I can confirm that's, at least it's on the wiki, that's what Paz's spirit does. It starts with a Babam equipped, and in the event battle, like, Babams are continuously raining from the sky.
Oh, jeez.
Oh, no.
That's even further reference. Jesus. Okay. Definitely play Metal Gear Solid 5. It's not even Ground Zeroes that has that in it. It's the proper game.
No, it's Ground Zeroes because I haven't played the proper game.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, it does happen in the proper game as well.
Oh, does it? Okay. Yeah. I mean, Ground Zeroes is like the prologue. It's like 15 minutes long if you want to, like, just run to the end.
Yeah.
So like you can get to that real quick and hate yourself afterward.
Yeah.
Well,
for sure.
I might do that. It was the early unlock for the last Humble monthly bundle. Ground Zeroes plus the Phantom Pain. So I might be playing that soon on PC.
The Phantom Pain is one of my favorite games of all time. It's very, very good if unfinished, but it's very, very good.
Thanks for that recommendation, Vice. You've never led me astray.
I mean, jeez, you don't have to go off of me off of one of the most popular games of the 8-year.
Metal Gear Solid 5 confirmed for garbage. Vice recommends it.
Fuck off. But anyway, I have 2 copies of that game, and I will never play them. All right, so I think we can move on here as well.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one. This is something I don't know what it is. Like, the SNK 40th anniversary adds further titles with another free update. What are these titles now?
So if you click on the link in our show notes.
Mm-hmm.
But
I mean, even if I'm not gonna know what any of these things are anyway.
Okay, I'll explain.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I've never heard of literally any of these.
And neither has anybody.
Oh, okay.
I'll just throw it out there.
Guys, you could finally play Ozma Wars.
Not even SNK. They have no fucking clue.
If you ever wanted to play Munch Mobile or Beast Busters, now's your chance.
Well, Beast Busters is actually a popular SNK game, so that's the one they would know. This game recently came out. It was headed by Digital Eclipse's or Backbone Entertainment's. I always forget which one it is. It's a chicken and egg situation. I forget which one's the current one, but Frank Cifaldi has worked on the Mega Man Legacy collections, the Disney Afternoon collection for Capcom, and it now worked on this SNK collection, which is phenomenal. It's really, really good in terms of being a really nice museum piece of SNK games pre-Neo Geo. So they couldn't get all of the games out on time for the physical release, but then they added almost twice the number of the original package as free DLC, which is amazing. And this includes some very important titles in SNK history. Ozma Wars and Satsuki vs. Commander are 2 of the very first SNK games to ever be released. Satsuki vs. Commander, Frank Cifaldi believes it to be the first arcade game with a boss battle.
Huh.
And call it such. And have like the structure of a boss battle. After each level, there is a distinct bigger boss with powers that nobody else has,
sure.
And there are 4 different bosses.
Nice.
It's really cool. There's another game on there called Vanguard. That was part of the original package that may have the first continue screen, which is really neat. And it's a really cool game.
Continue screen as opposed to what? Just a straight up game over?
like it just says continue. Like, do you want to continue?
Okay.
Like continue with a question mark.
All right.
I think it has the first time you can actually pump in money to continue in a game.
Huh.
Which is cool. You wouldn't think that would be something that needed to be started, but you think back of it and you say, there really isn't anything before that like does that. So really cool stuff. Probably there's a lot of oddities in this list. Ozma Wars, Satsuki versus Commander. Satsuki versus Commander is a one of the better games on the list of the new games that were added. It plays like Galaga, but you're a ninja fighting other ninjas.
Nice.
And so it's a lot of fun. It kind of you can only shoot one projectile per screen. It has to get all the way to the top before you can shoot another one, so you have to place your shots very accurately, like Space Invaders.
Yeah, I was just gonna say it's like Space Invaders in that regard. Yeah.
And the enemies are flying through the air, and when you hit them, their body becomes limp and becomes a different projectile. You actually have to dodge the body.
Jesus.
There's some other cool stuff on here. Munchmobile is pretty fun. It's very cartoony. Bermuda Triangle is one of their first shmups. World Wars is the sequel. Time Soldiers is one I haven't played. I haven't played Chopper Mania, but Paddle Mania is a lot of fun. It's basically like air hockey. SAR Search and Rescue, I think, is the last loop lever game. The loop lever is the SNK invention for Ikari Warriors and Tank, where essentially it was a joystick that you could rotate, so you could rotate your character and move them at the same time.
It was kind of like a twisty knob joystick.
Yes, we now use dual sticks in that for that same function, but it was an innovation nonetheless at the time. And Beastbusters was a game kind of like T2, the arcade game. You would have a gun and you move that around and control the reticle that way. And that one's a lot of fun because you're shooting zombies. And it was one of the very last games before they switched over to the Neo Geo format. And it also had a couple sequels and Neo Geo Pocket Color adventure game, which was
weird.
Cool. Yeah. So really cool stuff. And it's free. Why the hell not? It's Beastbusters is even 3-player. It's just even.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet.
Really cool. So definitely, if you haven't picked up, if you're curious about old arcade games and not necessarily like wanting to play like the cream of the crop, but like interesting stuff, like a lot of our fans do, I think this is a really good collection to do it with because the emulation is great and the presentation is phenomenal. It even has like a really nice museum mode where they go over games that weren't even included in the collection, old flyers of the games and stuff like that. It's expertly done. So please, if you are interested in arcade history and of a company that was very instrumental in arcade history, please take a look at it.
And also, this is pretty rad, actually. They're coming out with remakes of the original Panzer Dragoon, which was a Sega Saturn game, and Panzer Dragoon 2 Zwei. So, Panzer Dragoon 2, yeah, well done. But yeah, they're remaking those, which is pretty cool because those games aren't the easiest to play. Like you gotta go hunt down like old systems to play them. Like for Panzer Dragoon 1. Vice, didn't you tell me at one point that Panzer Dragoon Orta for the Xbox comes with Panzer Dragoon 1?
So, technically, you can play Panzer Dragoon 1 on Xbox One right now.
Okay.
Because Panzer Dragoon Orta is backwards compatible.
So there you go.
That was pretty recent, too, right? It was just recently added to the backwards compatibility list. So that's like a pretty new development. And I think they call it out in the press release where they announced that they were doing this remake, that part of it was that they were excited that people could play Orta and the first like the original Panzer Dragoon game right now on Xbox One, and to leverage that they're going to re-release 1 and Zwei.
So Panzer Dragoon Orta is the 4th game in the series. It is the ultimate expression of 1 and 2. The third game is an RPG called Panzer Dragoon Saga, which a lot of retro gamers know very well to be one of the best RPGs ever made that nobody can play.
Yeah, I was just going to say, unless they find a source code, that game's never getting re-released.
Yeah. But this is really excellent news because they're taking two old games that basically are one notch above like Star Fox in terms of graphical fidelity, and they are totally remaking them from the ground up, which means they will look as good as they should. And the art direction in the series has always been good. It's just and very whimsical. So with the proper expression of that, it'll really be a really cool expression of the series as a whole. So I'm looking forward to this very much. So I'm not holding out for Panzer Dragoon Saga to ever get remade. Panzer Dragoon Orta does not need to be remade at all. It is still a beautiful game, even though it was made for the original Xbox. And it also has one of the best soundtracks of all time. It's very, very, very good. If you like this type of game and have an Xbox One, you can buy Panzer Dragoon Orta and have a great freaking time. It is one of the best games for that system, and it's criminally underplayed, I would say. So I'm glad that I kind of question why they didn't release this as a collection. That's the only thing. They're releasing one and then the other, but I think as a collection this would be even better. But
yeah,
what do I know?
Well, in any case, now Vice, this more applies to you. The Binding. I'm a great host. The Binding of Isaac, the board game. Now, Vice and I had both kickstarted this, but I'm still waiting for mine to ship. I was given the announcement that it did ship. I'm waiting for it to arrive. But Vice, apparently you actually got yours already.
I got it extremely quickly. I got it actually before we recorded last week's episode. We just didn't have a chance to talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I got my nice foam mat and everything to go with it. I'm excited to play it at MagFest. I'm sure we'll update people on how that goes.
Yeah.
But I got probably I think it was the $45 tier or something like that. Before
I didn't go for the
stupid.
mat. Yeah, I didn't go for the mat because it added an additional $20 or $30 to the game. I was like, all right.
It's just a cool little thing, and it's very high quality, which I'm very happy to announce. So, I haven't played it yet, so I don't know how good it is, but I'm sure it'll be fine.
I'm sure it'll be miserable and achievement hunting quality. Just like you feel bad for every character all over again. The Binding of Isaac. I mean, if you've ever played the game, there is no happy ending for anyone ever.
Nope.
And I'm sure this will be the last time we ever talk about The Binding of Isaac on this podcast.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, I'm over it. All right, so
now on to Dark Souls.
Yeah, please. All right, so
I'm actually up to Gwyn.
Oh, nice.
Just need to kill him.
Yeah, do it. Finish the game, so we can finally say you beat it.
Yep.
Actually, here's something that I know OldManStompy has wanted to talk about. The Magic the Gathering Pro League. It's a new development, isn't it?
Yeah, so actually this just happened this week. So I think we've talked about this before, but MTG recently launched a new online client called MTG Arena. Some time ago, they hired Chris Cox, who was I think his previous post was at Microsoft. But he's an expert on esports. I think he's the CEO of the overall Magic division of Hasbro, or CEO of Wizards of the Coast. I forget his exact position. But they brought him in because they saw that MTG was losing a lot of space on the esports scene to Hearthstone and other games of that type, like Eternal and Artifact and like Slay the Spire, which doesn't have a PvP component, but it's still like a very popular collectible card game style game, to play online. To see that this is like a emerging market on Twitch for people to watch CCGs, and Magic was not really well suited to explore that space. They didn't put a lot of money into the tournament scene, and also the players themselves were like very dissatisfied that there was no like venue to become a professional Magic player. So at the World Championship, which is usually where they They qualify, I think it's 24 of the best players in the world. They, from all around the planet, including the best player on their current online client prior to MtG Arena, to come and compete. One of the players actually went on strike. He showed up to the hotel the day before the tournament and just didn't go, in protest of the way they treat fans. So before that, they had what's called the Silver Showcase. It was like a $150,000 invitational tournament, where a bunch of players, most of whom were not like full-time Magic players, they were like Hearthstone streamers or like Twitch celebrities. They got invited to this tournament, where they got to draft like the original beta and a bunch of other like really old sets like Antiquities and Arabian Nights. I think somebody actually opened a Scheherazade.
Neat.
Nice.
But
I was a big Tempest fan back in the day.
This was earlier, even before Tempest.
Yeah, Tempest is like 1997, 6. I want to say 7 or 8.
Yeah, I want to say somewhere around there. But anyway, so the pro player scene in Magic was like really put off by this, because it kind of sends the message that playing Magic as a full-time like card game, as like your main card game, is a dead end. Because like the primary way to success is obviously just to play something else that company puts a lot of money into, become famous, and then MTG will just give you money to come over and play in these like high-profile card game events.
Wow.
So as part of their esports initiative, they've sort of restructured, and they've deployed they've contracted 32 of the top 40 players in their current rankings. The rankings, I have no idea what the rankings mean. So they have, MTG has rankings now like professional sports has rankings. Like golf has rankings and college football has rankings, and punitively they're like voted on or they're numerically driven, but nobody knows how the rankings were actually generated. It's not something that you can like look at a tournament and say, oh, this guy's going to be in third place in the standings after this tournament's over. They just have like this very vague ranking where it seems like it makes sense because all the players who are winning all the tournaments are always at the top. But now like it really makes a big difference because they extended 32 contracts. They started with the top 32 and then some number of players declined. So they took 32 out of the top 40 players and they started a pro league where they're all getting like $75,000 a year just to play Magic and show up at events. And so the Pro Tour, which used to be the signature Magic tournament, there would be like 4 to 6 of them a year, are now these like much more exclusive professional leagues. I think they're being rebranded, called like the Mythic Festival, after the highest rarity of card Magic the Gathering.
Yeah, the Mythic Rare.
And so it'll be like always these 32 like pro league players plus like some number of challengers, which is, you used to qualify for the Pro Tour through like a series of feeder tournaments, like you would qualify for the World Series of Poker. It seems to be that list of players who qualify will be much smaller, and their goal will be to win the tournament and take one of the pro league spots from one of the 32 players for the next season. So the prize pools have also increased dramatically. So Pro Tours used to be, I think, a $250,000 prize pool. Now it's $500,000. And it's going to be split among a smaller series of players, and it's going to pay out all the way to last place. And also there's going to be a main like Mythic Championship at PAX East in March, which will have $1 million prize pool, which puts MTG tournaments actually on the same tier as the prize pools for the Hearthstone championships. At least for what's provided from Blizzard. So
these guys know that this is a children's game, right?
Yes, they know that it's a children's card game.
Meant for babies.
I will happily forward this question to you. When they're streaming on Twitch, like, did you know that vysethebold thinks that you're playing a children's card
game? Meanwhile, I'm talking about like 8-bit Sega games. I
was gonna say. Meanwhile, we're talking on a podcast like about a children's card game.
So like
these are just pieces of cardboard, right?
Right.
They're digital objects.
No, Mom, they're an investment.
I'm sorry.
This is my college fund.
I derailed this. I derailed that. I'm sorry. Please continue.
It's fine. It's only Magic. Seriously.
I'm sure David Copperfield's really good at this game.
David Williams is pretty good at this game.
Yeah, David Copperfield is the name of a Charles Dickens book. Vice, keep up.
Oh.
I'm sorry. I appreciate that we did like sort of jogged sideways into the literary space just for a little while.
Yes. Did it.
So, I did play Arena for a while. It's great if you're free to play. They front-loaded the rewards pretty heavily, so you can get a tier 2 like semi-casual deck that can win you enough prizes to play more or less indefinitely free to play, like pretty easily. Just picking up the open beta right now, which is pretty exciting. The old Magic Online client, it was serviceable in the sense that it contained the entire Magic the Gathering rules engine, which, as we all know, is quite the feat because Magic has hundreds of rules.
Oh yeah,
but there's all kinds of
comes out, you have to,
synergies that they didn't intend. But
every time a new set comes out, it's like, oh wait, now all of a sudden old cards might become relevant again, and we gotta like temper this and enhance that. It's like a mess every single time.
Right. So there's dozens of bugs in Magic Online. There are a lot of cards that don't work, and it just doesn't matter because most people don't care about it. But occasionally they'll release a new set, and it will cause an interaction that will have people playing this card again, and they'll have to go back and fix it. And the game is like such spaghetti code that sometimes even like a foil version of a card will have a bug that the non-foil version doesn't.
Oh, that's bizarre.
So you'd think that this would be almost impossible in any like well-programmed piece of software, but Magic Online is not a well-programmed piece of software. So MTG Arena seems to run pretty well. Of course, it's in beta, so not everything works perfectly.
Let me know when it comes out in Unlimited.
In Unlimited? Oh, I get it.
Yeah.
They did alpha, they did beta. I would be really happy if they called the next one Unlimited Edition and then revised and then.
Well, yeah, I was actually gonna say I said Unlimited as a joke, but like you'd think that when patching is done, you would just skip straight to revised.
I mean, it's not really that funny because like alpha and beta were called that in Magic because they were the alpha and beta releases. They were actually alpha and beta. But it's not really a joke.
But Unlimited wasn't unlimited. My life's a lie.
It was supposed to be unlimited. It was just so like alpha and beta are called limited alpha and limited beta because there were only 10 million cards in total produced during those print runs.
Okay.
All right, guys. This conversation's getting pretty unglued.
Thanks.
Well, I was actually going to go in the opposite direction. I was saying they're starting to up the ante.
Nice.
Nice.
So we know exactly when Vice and Lotus stopped playing Magic because Ante was still a thing that showed up occasionally on cards.
I mean, I stopped playing Magic like when Onslaught came out. Like Ante died a long time ago. Ante, like the last time Ante showed up was like
the
4th or 5th edition or something.
Something like that, yeah.
The Masquerade Saga.
I think it was gone by then. It was definitely an Ice Age.
It was long gone. Oh yeah, Ice Age had Ante. Yeah, and Bronze Tablet was in like 5th edition, I think, maybe.
Mm-hmm. I don't recall. They were all the Ante cards. One of them was like incredibly broken.
Oh, sorry, what?
One of the Ante cards was like fabulously broken, and the rest of them were just absolutely garbage.
Yeah.
There was one that was like draw 7 cards unless your opponent antes an extra card.
Yeah, it's like some of that stuff is terrifying.
Mm-hmm. So I do know that sometime around the turn of the century, there was an invitational tournament where they played for Ante, and the winner was the person who won the best cards in Ante at the end of the game, even if you lost more games than your opponent. If you won like their Black Lotus, then
I was gonna say, well, that's when I double down and I take my planes and I swear up and down that it's like the best card and therefore I'm the winner.
Well, it's
the best to me.
There's a card called Jeweled Bird from I think Arabian Nights that says that you can exchange it with the Ante card. So like the best strategy in that format was just to build a deck that found your Jeweled Bird and deploy it in exchange for whatever you had for Ante, so that you really only had to win one game, and then your opponent had no chance of making up the financial value of the Ante card that you gained because they were just getting like a 50-cent Jeweled Bird. It was a Chronicles card. It was worth nothing.
I was backing Chronicles. Jeez.
I think it was re-released in Chronicles. Anyway, Ante, it's for the best that Ante is not a part of the game anymore. It would be really frustrating.
It made the game so malicious.
Mm-hmm.
You're taking your opponent's shit.
So, I mean, Ante was designed to prevent a single player from having like a significant financial advantage over the other players, because if Magic is not a game that the best deck wins 100% of the time. It's more like 80%. So if you're like playing this amazing deck and you've got it full of powerful cards, then you're always risking, more or less a 1 in 5 shot that you're going to lose your Mox or your dual land, or your high-powered card, even if you play very well, to someone who has a much worse deck than you. So it provides this like financial balancing incentive. But like actually in reality, it's like gambling, and you can't really promote a tournament like that. And it sucks if you play a 50. Like, can you imagine playing a current like Magic tournament, which are usually like 18 rounds from start to finish, and having to ante one of your cards every time you lost?
Oh, yeah, it would be just like you wouldn't even have like a legal deck by the end of it. You have like 45 cards.
At the end of 18 rounds, you probably won most of them. But what if you lost like a critical card, early on, and you had to? I mean, it's an interesting story, certainly, like a sports movie where you get injured like really early on.
Yeah,
and fight through it.
You struggle all the way up to the top.
So speaking of this pro circuit coming out, I'm just waiting for when this is going to be rife with a cheating scandal. I just know it's going to happen because there's a lot of money. There's a lot of money at stake.
So on the lower circuits, on Star City Game Circuit, which is like the second biggest American circuit, there was a player who won a Power 9 tournament, and it came out that he was just an incredible rampant cheater. Like, it was blatantly obvious, and like streaming was a relatively new thing. So like, I don't think he was adjusted to the fact that his matches would be on camera a lot of the time as he like ran up the, and like.
It's one thing to hide something from a guy who's sitting across from you, but it's another thing when all the cameras are everywhere.
So Magic has always had a huge cheating problem. There's a guy by the name of Chris Pikula whose like tournament results are not great, but he was very good at Magic back in like the late 90s, and he was one of the only professionals who didn't cheat. Like, everybody fucking cheated in the early days of the Pro Tour because the resolution they had for getting caught cheating was very toothless. And so Chris Pikula was one of the leaders in trying to get the Pro Tour cleaned up and trying to get like a good penalty guide for different levels of cheating based on intent and the impact on the game. And as a result, he basically sacrificed his like chance to get into the Magic Hall of Fame because at the time you were voted on by your peers. And so obviously none of them, they were no longer getting away with cheating anymore. So they all hated him. It made Magic a lot more difficult for them. He never got in, and he probably never will get in because now like his accomplishments don't look very good by the standards of modern Magic.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I mean, yes, I agree this will still be a problem. It will be harder if it's an esports.
Yeah, I was gonna say the scandal that I'm waiting for is not necessarily like cheating on the players' ends, but like throwing games for gambling purposes and things like that.
Right.
That's when I'm wondering when that'll pop up, because every like competitive thing that has money involved before it's heavily regulated has this problem.
Right.
Eventually, and then it has to get cleaned up.
So thankfully, at least to some extent in Magic, since you have perfect information watching a game, so like in baseball or in football or even in soccer, sometimes it's very hard to tell when a player is intentionally throwing the game. But in
especially
esports,
with a pitcher that can like put a ball anywhere they want.
Right.
Yeah.
So in Magic, you have more or less perfect information. You can't like pretend to draw the card that you didn't need, or like it's or like it tends to be fairly obvious when you made a decision which is very antithetical to winning the game. It's also, like I said, at very high level play, you have at best maybe a 60-40 chance of winning the game. When everybody's of equal skill level. So it's very hard to throw a game of Magic intentionally, because it's very hard to win a game of Magic intentionally 100% of the time.
How about going into a game with like a bad deck on purpose, though?
I mean, that's a subtle thing that you can do. Like, for example, you can organize the metagame so that certain players have an advantage. That might be something that's possible. Like, that certain decks have good matchups against other decks. So if you have a lot of money riding on one person, you can give them a deck that's good against all the other players' decks. But that requires a lot of collusion. It would probably be hard to pull off. Like there are suboptimal configurations of a deck, but it would be pretty suspicious if you showed up to a tournament, especially with only 32 players, just not playing a bunch of good cards.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just thinking that maybe somebody might construct a deck to throw the game. You know what I mean? That was just my thought.
I agree with you that it's that this is always a concern. I think that a lot of the structure of Magic protects you from doing that. And
that's good.
Part of the judge penalty guide revolves around dealing with gambling. You are so there are certain things that are difficult to prevent. So, for example, you are always allowed to intentionally concede or intentionally draw in agreement with your opponent a game of Magic.
Okay.
But you are never allowed, on the field of play to offer your opponent anything in exchange for a concession or a draw. You are not allowed to make any reference to gambling. Someone even once made a joke saying that he bet his friend $20 that he'd win the game, and he got immediately disqualified.
Oh, damn.
So, like, the level of enforcement, they understand, I think, at the top level of Magic that gambling is obviously something that they want to stay away from because it has a strong corrupting influence on most professional sports.
Yeah,
and also runs afoul of laws in some of the countries they're trying to do business in. So
there's even been corruption scandals in like things like Twin Galaxies, like things have come out that like referees have been bribed and things like that. So I'm just hoping that like it when it does happen, or if it does, it's not like rampant and like destroys it.
So to me, it feels like Magic has the opposite problem. So the last time during this year's Hall of Fame election, there were two players. I think their names were Li Shi. One of them was Li Shiqian, who's a famous player from Hong Kong, and the other one, I think his name was Seth Manfield, who's like a very top. I think he's an Australian player, and it was pretty obvious that their results were more than good enough for them to get into the Hall of Fame. But all of this like mudslinging came out, talking about how people had like negative interactions that kind of maybe look like cheating, or like someone saw something on a stream where the guy drew an extra card or like played an extra land during a game. It's like he must have done it intentionally. There's no way that it was just an accident that he did after playing Magic for 17 rounds over 2 days for 25 hours. And he just
that
made a
sounds
mistake.
like something that would happen when you were tired. Yeah, sure.
Right, exactly. So there was one of the top Magic commentators on Twitch, made the comment that the Hall of Fame season is when all the Magic pros come out for a couple of weeks to talk about how all of their compatriots are just like giant pieces of shit. And so like there's a lot of mudslinging because the community is so afraid of cheating, and because it's so scary to sit down against someone and know that like you have to pay attention to every little thing that they might be doing. It's so easy. So one cheat that was going on in Paper Magic was that a guy was just like, so you're always required to shuffle your opponent's deck before you present it back to them. The reason you're supposed to do this is because you're expected to confirm that your opponent presented a 60-card deck, or whatever the minimum deck size was, and that they haven't like shorted you a couple of cards. But everybody always shuffles the deck before they present it back to the opponent. So this guy was shuffling the deck, and he was like very cautiously using sleight of hand, putting all the lands on the bottom of the deck. So his opponents would always draw a really bad opening hand.
Wow.
And it was hard to tell until you actually started watching the shuffling part of his match, which even on Twitch, most people don't do because it's boring. Like, nobody wants to watch people shuffle for 5 minutes. So it took a long time for it to be very clear and obvious that this guy was doing this and actually winning tournaments as a result. And the good thing, of course, is that we are, watching Magic tournaments. But this guy didn't just start doing this now. He's probably been doing this for a long time. And when you sit down against him in the future, if he gets unsuspended from his cheating ban from tournament play, you're always going to have to wonder, like, is this guy trying to cheat me? And you have to watch like every little thing that he does.
He should be banned for life. I mean, that's it. Like should be the punishment, banned for life. That's it.
I suspect so. Yes.
Yeah.
But it's very stressful to play Magic against a player who is cheating, and it's a big problem in Paper Magic. It's much harder to cheat in online Magic. So between the increased emphasis on streaming and the increased emphasis on the digital client, I would hope that it's a lot harder for Magic to be corrupted. Of course, you always worry that it might happen, but I think it's less likely.
Okay. Fair enough.
All right, so are there any additional thoughts on Magic the Gathering and or the Pro League?
I'm excited about it. That's it.
Yeah, that is pretty cool.
Yeah, no,
I didn't realize
really
the Magic
cool.
was going to be coming out in like such a big way compared to other esports. Well, very well then. That's the show for this week. So please remember to subscribe to the Corrective Consciousness YouTube and Soundcloud pages. While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes. It helps us promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement keeps the show going. You can also catch us on Thursday for our sister podcast, Corrective Consciousness, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. And finally, you could follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. Or finally, if you're interested in seeing my videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, currently doing Zone of the Enders, the second runner, or getting involved in conversations with me and other patrons on Discord, then perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon account, which can be found at patreon.com/LotusPrince.
You can friend me as vysethebold on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, Twitter, Switch, and Battle.net. I will also put in a quick plug for the Corrective Consciousness YouTube page. Now already has its first LP on it, and hopefully more as we move forward. So, typically the content that will be hosted there will be group collaboration. So. With the core members here.
Mm-hmm.
And you can find me as OldManStompy on most major gaming and social media networks, including MtG Arena, where I am OldManStompy, and I play Mono Green Dinosaur Stompy.
Hey! All right,
Nice.
Well, thank you very much for listening. Until next time, everyone.
Till next time.
Cheers.